doing? What are you doing?
Trying to keep everyone together. Let's just get moving. We need to head this direction.
Open it to me!
Hola, comrades! Today's topic of interest, Katara. There are two characters in Avatar: The Last Airbender that I absolutely adore and believe should be mentioned in the pantheon of the greatest characters not only in animated television, but in all of fiction. One of them is Zuko, whose character arc has attracted widespread and well-deserved acclaim. His is a brilliantly constructed story. Not only is every beat excellent, but they're executed with exemplary earnestness and empathy. The emotional reasoning behind every decision he makes is lucid, and although he does not switch sides until the midpoint of Season 3, the possibility that he could decide to do so is always tangible. Every decision he makes drips with gravitas, for they contribute to his unraveling the labyrinthine mess that is his confused, distorted self-image at the start of the series. Although he is given several easy opportunities to change sides, he rejects these, and he only turns against his father after he has everything that he ever wanted, therefore making that rejection more absolute and thus more effective. But I'm not going to be talking about him. No, I'm going to be talking about the other character I hold in high regard, a character whose story is nearly as powerful, but who has been underappreciated by fans and critics alike. Her name is Katara. Of the 5 major members of Team Avatar, Katara is the least enviable. While Zuko spends most of the series confused and wanting what he learns will never satisfy him, by the conclusion of the series, he is able to unbind himself from his past and make a stirring, cathartic transformation. As for the other 3 most important characters, the appeal is obvious. Aang is the chosen hero. Sokka is the funny but nerdy one who constructs brilliant plans. Most notably, the plan to invade the Fire Nation on the Eclipse, which would have succeeded but for Azula's infiltration of the Earth Kingdom royal court. Toph is the cynical and tough one, who's independent to a fault and rolls off clever one-liners. Katara, meanwhile, has garnered a reputation as the mother of Team Avatar, a reputation which is even dissected and analyzed in episode 307, The Runaway. She is not cool like the others. She's an idealist, and she's guided by her passions. This all amalgamates to her not receiving as much respect as the rest of Team Avatar. The caricature of Katara is that she's a cloying sentimentalist with a taste for over-emotional melodrama. When she acts against her motherly image, she's called a hypocrite by fans. They say she doesn't practice what she preaches. The reality is a hell of a lot more nuanced. These moments are not aberrations. Rather, they are as much a part of Katara as the loving and nurturing side that is more overt. Katara is as much a two-sided character as Aang, Toph, and Zuko, but this is overlooked because her characterization is more subtle. There are 2 Kataras. One is who she is most of the time. This is the maternal do-gooder. She's loving and considerate, even at the expense of practicality. This is the Katara who attempts to hide the existence of the Fire Nation from Aang at the Southern Air Temple. This is the Katara who intentionally lets herself be thrown in a Fire Nation prison so that she can free Haru. This is the Katara who allows Sokka to meet their father in her place at the end of Season 2. However, early on, the existence of another Katara emerges. She's bitter, revenge-hungry, and relentless. There's nothing she's not willing to do in order to achieve her goals. This is the Katara who steals the waterbending scroll from the pirates, then uses it to practice waterbending by the river, which not only leaves her exposed, but it also subverts what she said to Aang. This is the Katara who unleashes spectacularly vicious insults against those who have wronged her.
The stars sure are beautiful tonight. Too bad you can't see them, Toph.
You're right, Toph. Let's go find him and give him a medal. The not as much of a jerk as you could have been award.
This is the Katara who is not willing to give Jet a second chance and imprisons him in ice when he reaches for his pocket. This is the Katara who is the last one to accept Zuko's transformation and delivers chilling words to him after he joins the group.
You might have everyone else here buying your transformation, but you and I both know you've struggled with doing the right thing in the past. So let me tell you something right now. You make one step backward, one slip up, give me one reason to think you might hurt Aang, and you won't have to worry about your destiny anymore. Because I'll make sure your destiny ends right then and there. Permanently.
When I first watched the series through, I was not a major fan of Katara. I liked her better than Aang, who I will maintain is the least interesting of the 5 major members of Team Avatar. But my favorite of the original 3 was Sokka, whom I loved for his witty but exasperated humor. Such as in the episode The Fortune Teller, wherein a smug villager condescendingly asks him whether his science can say why it rains, to which Sokka responds that yes, it can. As I reached Season 3, however, my opinion began to change. Sokka's arc was extremely well done, but it was still fairly simple. He starts the series as an arrogant warrior wannabe, discovers that he's not the warrior he thought he was, and that compared to Zuko, his skills are laughable. To become as important as he wants to be, he has to learn that his skill lies not in brute force, but in planning and ingenuity. Katara's arc is much more complicated. I wondered what it was, but when I watched a certain episode of the show, the last one primarily focusing on Katara, her arc suddenly snapped into view, and I realized how brilliant it was. Katara instantly became my second favorite character in the series, and I've only grown to appreciate her more as I watched the series over and over again. It is an arc about defeating the darkness in oneself and choosing not to leap into the abyss of moral ambiguity or even outright villainy. These two sides of Katara are not evoked by different impulses, as is the case with Zuko, but rather by the same impulse, that being her unceasing passion. This is clever, challenging, and transgressive. Compare this to Zuko. What he needs to do is straightforward. He must cast off the side of himself that is committed to serving his abusive despot of a father, and accept the side of himself that rejects the desires of his father and supports Team Avatar. Of course, straightforward does not mean easy. This is excruciatingly difficult for Zuko, as he must free himself from what he's believed for years, but it's not difficult to see what he has to do. In this regard, Katara is more complicated. There's no side of herself she can cast off because the two sides of her are inextricably linked, for they arise from the same impulse. To destroy one would be to destroy both, so there's no great transformation for her. Instead, she has to stop her darker side from taking control. Episode 303, The Painted Lady, demonstrates how very linked these sides of her are. Her objective during this episode is to help the people of a small rinky-dink town in the Fire Nation. How she accomplishes this, however, is through morally compromised means. She lies to Team Avatar and even sabotages their plans, feeding Appa purple berries so that she can pretend he's sick, so they do not have to travel. However, her actions lead to the lives of the village people becoming materially better. Indeed, Katara is not framed as villainous when her darker actions are channeled for a positive or neutral purpose, such as when she steals the waterbending scroll from the pirates, or when she, without hesitation, takes the clothes she needs to sneak into the Fire Nation. Though she's not always right, her actions are always understandable. The two sides of Katara are not a good side and an evil side, but rather a light side and a dark side. While this may appear at first to be a pedantic difference, it is an important distinction to make. Consider that Avatar draws heavily from Eastern religions and philosophies. Their darkness is not necessarily evil. There's yin, and then there's yang. Both are natural. Aang learns as much when he explores the Spirit Oasis at the North Pole, then meets the Face Stealer Ko in the Spirit World. Both are needed, but they must be in balance. This philosophy runs through the show. The Avatar's stated purpose is not to rid the world of evil, but to restore balance. Thus, Katara's major problem is not that this darkness exists in her, but that it might overpower her, as threatens to occur later in the series. In episode 308, The Puppet Master, she is forced to learn and use bloodbending, a form of bending that turns the opponent into a puppet who must obey the commands of the user in order to save Aang and Sokka. Now, if this had happened to Aang or Sokka, this would have been unfortunate, but because it happened to Katara, it is elevated to the level of tragedy. Because she is fueled by passion, she has a much stronger and less compromising moral compass than the rest of Team Avatar. Consider episode 307 again. Desperate for money, the entirety of Team Avatar joins Toph in her scams, with the exception of Katara. This is not because Katara is opposed to scams on principle, as Toph suspects, but rather because she's against brazen and unnecessary risks. There is also a substance to her passion that refuses to ebb regardless of the level of stress burdening her. Consider how she refuses to surrender when she is thrown in jail at the end of that same episode. Not only wanting to save herself, but also wanting to warn Aang, she uses her own sweat to waterbend. However, the most prominent example of the relentless, unyielding determination Katara's passions provide her comes in episode 211, The Desert, when Team Avatar must struggle through the vast Siwang Desert. Appa has been stolen, which sucks Aang into a whirlpool of preteen brooding. Sokka has drunk cactus juice and gotten high as a result. Toph is basically helpless because the softness of the sand interferes with her feet vision. As such, Katara is the only one who can keep the group together and lead them to safety. Accepting this, she takes an active leadership role and saves them. Her place in the group, which is that she is not only its heart, but also its glue, is never clearer. In episode 110, Jet, Sokka brags about being the leader, leading Katara to scoff and say that Aang is the true leader, to which Sokka responds that Aang is just a goofy kid. The irony of this is that Katara never suggests in the exchange that she is the leader, even though throughout the course of the series, she is consistently the one who assumes the responsibilities of a leader. She keeps the group together and inspires it to action, and pays special attention to every member of the group. She, more than anyone, makes this a distinct group and not a loose collection of individuals who happen to be traveling together. This is all very endearing. But that same passion and commitment also fuels the darkness inside her. Earlier in this video, I talked about Katara's arc snapping into place after a certain episode. That episode was 316, The Southern Raiders, wherein Katara has the opportunity to kill the man who murdered her mother. Aang would rather have her suppress her desire for revenge, but Zuko decides that she needs to face it. This is her at her darkest, and this is a version of her that the other three members of Team Avatar do not and cannot understand. Zuko is the only one who understands her passionate conviction to do this, though he underestimates her resolve. When she bloodbends a guard while attempting to gather information, he is surprised. Learning bloodbending crushed her more than it would have otherwise because she recognizes that darkness in her, and knows that with the cruelty of bloodbending in her arsenal, she is capable of great evil. In The Southern Raiders, she walks up to the line of becoming a villain by torturing that guard, and if she had killed the man who killed her mother, she would have crossed that line. I should clarify that when I mean villain, I don't mean the cackling, mustache-twirling kind, like Ozai or even the much more interesting Azula. I mean the type of villains featured in Avatar's sequel series, The Legend of Korra. They are not pure evil. They are not framed as hobgoblins who need to be banished to the darkness with thunderous haste. They're even right on multiple points. Their problem is that they are out of balance. They have allowed themselves to be twisted to extremes. As Katara prepares to strike down the man who killed her mother, there's a clear path unfolding out before her that leads to her becoming a villain of that type. However, in the end, she cannot bring herself to attack. The icicles she has created fall to the ground. The darkness does not take control of her. This is not a general morality lesson, no matter how much Aang wants to make it one. She does not forgive the man who killed her mother, as Aang desires. That darkness is still inside her, and the show recognizes that this is not negative. A little darkness is understandable, and it is inevitable considering Katara's overwhelming passion. But letting it consume her would have stopped her from being the radiantly moral person she wants to be. So she forces herself to step back and to not kill. Zuko would not have condemned her if she had killed, by the way. She would not have had to face consequences, except her own regret. She has to step back from the abyss entirely under her own volition. There's an interesting parallel here with Zuko, who turns from his father not when this would have been easy, but when it was the most difficult, when he had everything he had ever said he wanted. Katara's warm love and her icy hatred both arise from her overwhelming passion. This is what led her to trust Zuko even when no one else would. And after his betrayal of her, it is what led her to refuse to accept him even after everyone else had. This is who Katara is, and to destroy that passion would leave her inert and incapable of love or affection. What she manages to accomplish throughout her character arc, however, is to face the core of that darkness without being consumed by it. She grows as a person by acknowledging and surpassing this darkness, symbolized both in her refusing to kill the man who killed her mother, and by finally accepting Zuko into the group.
But I didn't forgive him. I'll never forgive him. But I am ready to forgive you.
Katara as she is commonly depicted is Katara as she wants to be seen. It's her bright and sunshiny, if a little uptight, side. The loathings and regrets that she hides from the world are as much a part of her, though she's not willing to admit this. Although she's not proud of what she considers as failings, they make her a significantly more interesting character. Here's a little writing advice. A character who is sweet and moral without having to overcome anything is boring. There's no conflict, no tension. What's far more interesting is a character who wants to be moral, but has to contain her own darkness in order to do so. A character like Katara. Her struggle might not be as interesting as Zuko's, or as complex as Korra's, but it is fascinating nonetheless. When Katara bans bloodbending during the gap between Avatar and Korra, she does not only do this because it will make the world a safer place. That is part of it, but she also wants to contain the dark side of herself. It is a battle she has to constantly fight, but it is a battle she wins, and that's inspiring. So if you liked what you saw today, consider donating to my Patreon so I can produce more dual-sided content. Also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that flowing, elegant, ambitious stuff. Adios, comrades!